Welcome to Manhwa Destiny, where we discover destiny in every page. The story begins in a dark and gloomy forest. It was raining heavily in the early spring of the year. We see a wrecked carriage not far from the bushes, and from the looks of it, it wasn't an ordinary accident. Bloodstains are scattered around the cart, and the open door indicates that the passengers tried to escape. Now we see our protagonist. She wears a purple pendant that complements her dark blue dress. She has long violet hair and amethyst-like eyes that perfectly suit her role. Our girl is none other than Gabriella, the villainess, but we will call her Gabby for short. Our girl lies down in the rain, awaiting her end. She looks at the sky with a dead expression on her face, as if she has already anticipated this event. As she was about to close her eyes, a voice is heard addressing her as lady. The voice is from a man with black hair, slowly approaching our bloodied girl. And no, the blood isn't from her period, just to be clear. The man is evidently bewildered at the sight he is seeing. Basing from the drenched, unscathed clothing he wears, it seems like he wasn't in the carriage and only made his way by foot. Gabby gazes at the man. Despite the evident struggle, she mustered up all her strength to tilt her head and says that she wants the man to live his life. That is why she sent him away, pretending not to know. The man gently lifts up our fading girl. Underneath his robe, we see a luxurious red suit, indicating that this guy is from a royal family. Gabby just stared at him. She no longer has any strength to lift her hand or even speak. In her mind, she thinks that her end would have been better if it had been on a sunny day. The man is clearly trying to hold back his tears while asking our girl what is she doing in such a place. In Gabby's thoughts, if it had been a sunny day, the man's face wouldn't have looked so sad. As these thoughts linger her mind, her dead expression is replaced by that of sadness. The man is revealed to be Ernest Castle X, whom we will call by Ernest from now on. He is the one who belongs to the powers of the night, the leader who is faithfully followed by X's powerful army, and the husband of the villainous saint, Gabriella. Their start was a full contract, not a bond made from love. As it turns out, our girl has been reincarnated in the novel March for a True Saint as the villainess, Gabriella. When she realized that, she tried desperately to remember the content of the original story, in hopes that it would help her avoid the character's fate. Gabby is an illegitimate daughter who was born to a country lord, Count Nassirt. Gabby lives like a saint. She is the jealous type, incriminating and tormenting the real saint of the original story. And in the end, like every other novel, she ended up facing death, ending her rule of tyranny and deceit. When our girl realizes this, she starts hitting the mirror while looking at herself, saying that she doesn't want to meet the same fate as the villainess. She doesn't want to die. At the time, she read the novel before she got reincarnated in her new body. The author's name came to her mind. The author released a message saying that his next job is a series of March for a True Saint, and he is currently preparing a marriage by contract story centered on the cold man in the North Sea. With that in mind, our girl thinks that if he is a cold North Sea man, then there is only Ernest, Duke X. She wonders if the man will be the male lead of the next novel. Our girl assumes that since the author's next work is a story that hasn't been done yet, there is a chance that the coldness of Ernest could change. So, Gabby thought that it would be nice if she takes on the female lead of the story. Unlike being the villainess like Gabriella, it might lead to a happy life. Going back to the present, Gabby talks to herself, saying that it is what she used to think so, but despite her efforts, she still finds herself on the brink of death. Ernest desperately calls for Gabby to stay awake, pleading our girl to not leave him behind. Suddenly, a man arrives, telling Ernest that they have caught the getaway driver of the assailants. He drags a man with a mustache with him, saying that he admitted to tampering with the carriage wheel. And on the man's back, there is a mark of the day's power. Gabby's eyes are starting to fade, yet she still put the effort to look at the man responsible for the crime. The soldier informs Ernest that the first prince must be behind all this vile act. In a cold voice, Ernest instructs his subordinate to cut off the driver's arm. He didn't even bother looking at the man. He just wants to punish the demon that caused harm to his wife like a real Chad. The getaway driver is about to learn the real definition of fuck around and find out at this moment, as his face turns pale, and his eyes widen from fear. Ernest then commands the soldier to squeeze out all information they can get from the man to know who really is behind all this. After that, the soldier is to proceed to cutting off the getaway driver's legs and make him crawl for the rest of his life. Gabby stares at the furious Ernest, stating that this is the first time she ever saw her husband gets mad like this. She admits that it is a terrifying sight to behold. Even though it was only a contract marriage, her husband has always been kind to her. The duration of the contract is 3 years. The first condition is that they had to act like a real couple, loving each other. The second condition is that they must not fall for each other. And lastly, the third is that they won't get back together after the divorce. Despite all these conditions, the 3 years they spent as husband and wife was filled with happiness. Our girl was afraid to tell her husband her real feelings, in fear of breaking the contract. She wanted to give him a certain object before the contract period ends, so that Ernest has no longer has to bow to the royal family. But she never thought that she would end up dying like this in the process. Still, she kept the family heirloom that her husband gave her as a wedding gift. A little flashback before this tragic event, the assailant suddenly opened our girl's carriage and attempts to steal her ring. In desperation, Gabby took the ring off her fingers and swallowed it, preventing the man from taking it. It is the proud relic of X that won't be destroyed by fire, a very precious ring. So, Gabby will never let it fall into the hands of the imperial family. Our girl opens her mouth and tries to tell Ernest something, but seeing her wife struggle to even speak is unbearable for the nobleman. He prompts our girl to stop talking and conserve her energy for her recovery. However, Gabby knows that she will not be able to escape the grasp of death, so she needs to tell him now. She informs her husband that she still have the ring with her. Furthermore, she comments that Ernest's body temperature is quite high, probably because he got soaked in the rain for a long time, or maybe because Gabby's temperature is slowly getting colder. Nonetheless, up until her last moments, she still shows care for her husband. Ernest pleads his wife to stop talking as if she is saying goodbye. He doesn't want to accept the truth laid right in front of him. With her last bit of strength, she grabs Ernest's robe, apologizing in her mind for leaving him such a bad memory. Regardless, she still appreciates him for coming to see her and not letting her die alone. And with that final thoughts of her, Gabby's hand loses its grip and falls to the ground, leaving Ernest with a blank expression on his face. In that faithful moment, our girl, Gabriella the villainess, dies cradled by her husband. As her soul leaves her body, our girl prays that if they are given another life, she hopes that they will meet again. The scene changes, showing the hands of the clock of life ticking and moving fast. Our girl is woken up by a man asking her if she is paying attention. She opens her eyes, visibly confused on what is going on. Our girl knows that she has died from the carriage accident, so how is she still alive? The protagonist now has a light pink hair and green eyes, totally different from the ones she had before. The place she is currently at is familiar to her. She is in the president of the Great Hall, making her wonder what is she doing in such a place when she was supposed to be dead. She contemplates why the forces of day and the forces of night are gathered in the same place, thinking if the two factions have united. There are too many questions in our girl's mind. She eager wants to know what just happened. Suddenly, the man who talked to her starts saying that today they have officially signed the marriage vow between Prince X and Her Royal Highness, the Princess. He adds that he understands that Her Highness the Princess will leave for the north with the Duke 3 days later. Our girl wonders if the Prince X the man is talking about is the same as her husband. She ponders why would there be a marriage vow between him and the princess. Suddenly, our girl notices something wrong, causing her to shake. Her head began to hurt out of nowhere, as if it was being split into two. Memories that wasn't hers started flooding her mind. People calling her the shame of the imperial family, a stain in the veins of the noble son, a sleepwalker, princess idiot. As she delves deeper, she uncovers the identity of her new physical form, Princess Peony Isodium. Hailing from the esteemed factions of the sun, this princess boasts an adorn made of pinkish, cascading curls and striking emerald green eyes. Initially, our protagonist vehemently rejects this surreal reality, grappling with the incredulity that her soul could inhabit the body of a royal figure such as Princess Peony. However, as the undeniable truth persists before her, she begins a gradual, reluctant acceptance, wrestling with the profound strangeness of the situation. Amidst this inner turmoil, a man sporting an impressive mustache maintains his discourse, insisting that unless there are objections to the impending marriage contract, the proceedings will move forward. Directing his attention to our protagonist, he summons her to the table, guiding her to review the documents laid out before her. In a commanding yet courteous manner, he urges her to affix her signature to the marriage contract, extending the same directive to Lord X, signifying the weighty formality of the occasion. The Lord X we see now has the same face as the previous one, proving that he is indeed our girl's husband, but his facial expression is that of a dead man, and his eyes look as if they are zoning out. Even our girl who knew her husband very well thinks the same. According to her, this Ernest in front of her has a darker expression and he seems much calmer and colder. Naturally, our girl's eyes drifted towards the man she loved till her death. She stares at her husband, observing every little detail that she thought she wouldn't ever see again. Ernest notices our girl's gaze, making the previous Gabby to blush. But to her surprise, Ernest just gave her a terrifying cold glare. It is as if he isn't even the slightest interested in her, even though they are both getting married. Gabby, whom we will now call Peony due to her new body, jolts from her soon-to-be husband's reaction. Ernest, no longer bothering to glance her way, hastily signs the contract, eager to put an end to this absurdity as swiftly as he can. The man with the mustache turns to our girl, prompting her to hurry up and follow Ernest's lead. But as Peony looks at the wedding vows, she can't make her hand move. She looks at the date in the document, and she learns that today is April 6, 826. It has been 6 years since Gabriella passed away. With a trembling hand, she slowly affixes her signature to the document, while in her mind, she still thinks about the fact that it has been 6 years after her untimely death. In a crazy turn of events, the heavens allowed her to be Ernest's wife once again. But this time, she is the daughter of the imperial family, which Ernest loathes. This may not go as smooth as the marriage contract with Gabriella. Our girl contemplates if she will tell Ernest the truth, that she is actually Gabriella, the villainess that died on his arms. Within the recesses of her mind, she recalls fervently praying to the gods for a chance to reunite. And miraculously, her wish was granted, permitting her return from the realm of the death, despite being in another woman's body. Peony opens her mouth, but no words would come out of it. Then, she tries to write something, but her hand trembled and it won't move the way she wants it to move. It is as if something is preventing her to tell the truth to Ernest. She ponders how she can convey the truth to her husband. He is just right in front of her, but she can't do anything to inform him about the situation. Perhaps this is a restriction from some kind of magic, a constraint in return for allowing her to be brought to life. With a heavy heart, she wonders if she has to continue living as Peony now and totally forget her past life. Our girl knows that it will be a hard thing to do, especially since the faction that Peony belongs to is the enemy of her husband's faction. The Empire has been divided into two powers for a long time. The first one is the Day's powers. They are the wealthy capital in the south loyal to the imperial family. They also adore art, culture, and horsemanship. The second one is the powers of the night, to which Ernest belongs. Just like the Day's power, they also adore art, culture, and horsemanship. They are centered in the desolate North Sea and are completely united and follow the orders of the Grand Duke. The two Empire powers have entirely different religions, cultures, and lifestyles. There is no reason for marriages beyond this influence. But what does this arranged marriage between the two factions mean? Peony looks at the wedding dress in the corner. It will be the exact same dress that she would wear in 3 days when she leaves the palace. As it turns out, the Emperor suddenly insisted on reconciliation to unite the two powers. For Peony, it is honestly a good idea, especially for the North, which will benefit the most from the marriage. As she delicately runs her fingers over the fabric of the wedding gown, thoughts of her husband, Ernest, flood her mind. She has waited long just to see his face, but it has turned colder than ever. Our girl keenly observes that Ernest is compelling himself to grapple with the inevitable union between him and Princess Peony. Despite his internal reluctance, our protagonist ponders whether her time as Gabby has truly ended, contemplating whether Ernest still retains memories of her former self. Peony tells herself not to be consumed by despair. According to her, the reason why Ernest has this dark expression towards Peony is not because he remembers Gabby. She knows that her husband has that kind of expression due to his loathe for the imperial family, and Peony belongs to that family. She tries desperately not to be affected by her husband's cold gaze, repeatedly telling herself that the gloomy reaction is not because of her, but because of her body. Our girl apologizes, saying that even though she is aware that Ernest hates this idea of marriage, she can't help but be happy that they will meet again in this way. She knows it is selfish for her to feel that way, but being Ernest's wife once again brings her immeasurable happiness. The previous Gabby then wonders if her husband has eaten well during her absence. According to her, Ernest would usually skip meals because he was so focused on his work, leading her to think that he won't even be able to eat properly at the day of the wedding. She recalls the time when his servants would forcefully make him eat, even going as far as spoon-feeding him just so he won't die from starvation. Our girl felt an incredible nostalgia and longingness for the days gone by. While she was preoccupied with her thoughts, an attendant barges into her room, eager to serve her. Peony was taken aback by the maid's sudden appearance. She didn't even greet her properly despite being the princess. The maid slams down her sewing kit, an action that shouldn't be done in the presence of a royalty. Then, the maid commandingly tells her to stand up straight, saying that Peony has lost so much weight that she has to adjust her waist once again. Our girl didn't like the maid's attitude towards her. In her mind, she wonders how dare this lowly servant talks to her this way. Thanks to the memory of her new body, our girl can recall Lady Peony's condition. Since her birth, she has been mistreated, even by the maids. From a very young age, Peony was ignored and neglected. Gabby's consciousness began to transfer to Peony's body a week ago. When her consciousness penetrated her body, even though Peony remained bedridden at that time, no one cared about her, since they all had a stigma against her. Our girl thinks that the cause of all this maltreatment is one of Peony's brothers, the heirs to the throne. Despite all that, Peony survived because no one cared about her, even though her foolish brothers thought they could kill her at any moment. Our girl had to pretend to be a fool just to stay alive. She had to adapt to Peony's persona so that the people around her won't suspect a thing. There are many things that she needs to be cautious about, but she really don't deserve to be treated like trash, especially by a lowly maid. Peony smiles and asks the maid why is she the one responsible for the dress and not the princess's maid of honor. The disrespectful maid asks what's wrong with her being as a replacement. In a calm yet cold demeanor, our girl apologizes, saying that she has no choice but to do her next action, leaving the maid wondering about is she talking about. Peony just casually tells her that the maid will die within an hour, causing the attendant to be even more baffled. Our girl explains that the maid is very bold. The pearls on her gown signifies the celebration for the new bride's departure, but the maid had the audacity to replace them with fake ones. Peony smiles, asking the attendant if that act won't warrant death. She gazes down the maid with a terrifying look in her eyes. Our girl wears a sinister smile, totally in contrast with the previous Peony, and more aligned with her personality as the villainous Gabby. The maid is engulfed with despair. Her complexion turns pale as she looks at our girl's eyes. She then retreats in a panic, denying all accusations, saying that she doesn't even know if the pearls are real or not, emphasizing that she wasn't the one who did it. But our girl didn't pay attention to any of her words. Instead, she happily tells the maid to continue her work and adjust the dress to her fitting. The servant nervously complies, and asks our girl if she has told anyone about this incident. Peony acts all cute and innocent, asking if she prefers that she tells the other maids about it, to which the servant quickly declines. Our girl then wonders what will happen if she spills the beans to the Prime Minister. After all, the pearls magically disappeared without anyone taking it. At this point, the servant is soiling herself from fear. She begs our girl to not tell the Prime Minister, saying that she wasn't really the one who took the pears. So, Peony asks if it was the other maids that stole it, to which the servant can't deny nor confirm. In our girl's mind, she knows that the other maids will tear her tongue out. She won't even be able to say that the other maids stole it themselves, because in reality, she is their accomplice. Peony deems the maid to be foolish. It won't be possible to change the wedding dress. They thought that even if Peony realized it, there is nothing she can do. But in our girl's case, they thought that if they stole some of them, she wouldn't find out. This terrible act made our girl wonder how many people exploits Peony like this. She claps her hand, saying that she should ask her brother first what he thinks about the dress. She innocently comments that even without the pearls, her brother would still compliment her looks and call her beautiful. Peony was about to dash out the room to go see her brother, but the maid stops her, asking to please wait a moment. Seeing that the maid is now willing to talk, Peony becomes serious and asks her who should she blame for this atrocious act. But the maid just states that she can still retrieve the pearls since there is still time before the wedding. Our girl becomes skeptical, asking how the maid knows that the pearls weren't sold off yet. The question agitates the servant, and she can't find the right words to say. Peony crosses her arms, thinking that this maid is really foolish, but even as stupid as her can be useful to our girl. As the maid can no longer provide any explanation, Peony commands her to kneel on both knees, baffling the maid. Seeing the servant act dumb, our girl asks if she needs help understanding the command, and offers her assistance to her. The servant remains defiant towards our girl's command, yet the trembling of her lips indicates that she knows that our girl is serious right now. Peony then resorts to indirect threats, saying that she will tell her brother that even without the pearls, she will get married. The maid allowed the other servants to take it and help them as well. Our girl will also make sure that her brother learns about that. This causes the maid to instantly fall to her knees, begging Peony to have mercy and give her another chance. Our girl smiles and asks the maid why is her head still held high despite kneeling on the ground. That isn't the right way to beg for forgiveness. The maid then prostrates herself, saying that she was just consumed by greed and asks for mercy. Our girl has heard the words she wanted to hear. She tells the servant that she will forgive such insolence, but in return, she will have to be loyal to her and follow our girl all the way to Ernest. The maid is bewildered by our girl's request, so Peony explains that she is actually impressed with her. If she won't agree to her request, then she will send the maid in prison and just bring along another servant. She has to choose between loyalty or spending the rest of her life in prison for stealing from the imperial family. The maid chooses the former, stating that she will become loyal to Peony from now on. Our girl then asks for her name, to which she answers Sonia. Peony pats her head, stating that from now on, the maid will be loyal to Lady Peony only. Our girl will make sure that everyone gets the punishment they deserve, and this is her thanks to Peony for giving our girl her body. It is a bouquet of flowers called Revenge. A few days later, we see a red banner with insignia on it. We see our girl along with Ernest by her side, bidding farewell to Peony's family members. There is a man with a long blonde hair and a pink-haired prince sending our girl off. The blonde-haired man expresses his sadness about his sister's departure, or so he says. His face doesn't have any hint of longingness though. He is the first prince, Tudwig Fraken Isodium, or Tudwig for short. With a bright smile, Tudwig tells the couple to not worry about their safety because the royal guard will accompany them to the Dalton port. Peony smiles on the outside, responding to Tudwig's statement. But deep inside her mind, she knows that this is all formality. She thanks her brother for his kindness and worries about her safety. Meanwhile, all the noble women around started swooning at the sight of the handsome first prince. For our girl though, she doesn't find Tudwig's face attractive. All she sees is a face filled with greed. According to her, he is a greedy man who had everything in the world at his fingertips, but also tried to steal the legacies of other families. He might be connected to the incident with Gabby. Our girl theorizes this as well. The possibility of this turd to be the mastermind of Gabby's death is high likely. Peony stares at her brother with suspicions in her mind, but she tries her best not to make it apparent, while Ernest remains the same, cold and unwavering. Despite holding it together, our girl is really trembling inside, struggling to calm herself down. All she can do is clench her fist as hard as she could, while maintaining to pretend to be Peony. She reminds herself not to get caught up in her emotions and focus only on the bigger prey. The mindset she gained when she lived as Grand Duchess Equus is still alive inside her. Tudwig continues his self-righteous facade and states his regret for not being able to personally accompany his dear sister to the end. But he states that he felt relieved when he knew that the third prince would go with them. After all, they are both biological siblings from the same mother. He is pertaining to the pink-haired man beside him, and from the looks of it, he only forced this suggestion on his own, as the third prince looks surprised by this sudden turn of event. Our girl is aware that although they may be from the same mother, the third prince never loved her at all. The pink-haired man just looked away while Tudwig sells him off. Even though it is said that ensuring the proper arrival of goods in commercial lives in X is an important role, in reality, maybe that is something the third prince was forced into because he couldn't secure a suitable position in the imperial palace. Our girl starts assessing the third prince, Johannes Mimmel Isodium. According to her, his height and body size are decent. He is just 1 year older than Peony, so the age gap isn't that far. She wonders how long this pink cotton candy sweetness will endure in the Northern Navy. Tudwig tells Peony to live well and don't forget to correspond with her brother. Our girl responds that Peony will absolutely never forget about her eldest brother, to which the first prince praises her for. Our girl keeps on speaking about herself in third person because that is what the first prince told her to do, threatening her to keep speaking in third person. Tudwig grabbed Peony's shoulder, leaving her no choice but to comply. The lingering sensations within Peony's body evoke an eerie chill, prompting our protagonist to recollect the event. She muses that it might have been the first prince who propagated the rumors maligning Peony's intellect. Our villainous girl can't stand speaking in the absent form in front of so many people. She would rather die and drown in the water than do it, but she knows that she has no say in the matter. Peony grins, saying that there is something she must do later. She coughs to clear her throat, then address her brother, saying that Peony wants to thank him. Tudwig was caught off guard by our girl's sudden statement, asking what could she be thanking him for. Peony then states that it is all because of her brother that Peony was able to marry such a handsome husband, then proceeds to cling to Ernest. Our girl clearly has the riz. Our girl claps her hand as she remembers something. She spins around, showcasing her beautiful gown to her brother, saying that the dress is wonderful. Tudwig swiftly detected the substitution of fake pearls adorning his sister's attire. His widened eyes and the disappearance of his smile revealed a swift transformation from contentment to simmering anger. Observant spectators took note of the pearl discrepancy and began murmuring amongst themselves, unequivocally asserting that the pearls were undoubtedly counterfeit. As per their understanding, genuine pearls should shimmer with a spectrum of rainbow hues when exposed to sunlight. However, these pearls fail to exhibit such iridescence. The gossip then turns to the first prince. It is well known that Tudwig was the one assigned to buy the dress, and he also boasted that it has costed him a large amount of money to procure. However, despite the proclaimed grandeur, the embedded pearls are evidently counterfeit, leading the crowd to speculate that the first prince chose to economize on the fourth princess's wedding gown. This speculation arose due to the inferred connection between the two, stemming from sharing the same mother. The gossip continues, saying that even though the first prince said he would take care of Peony and watch over her, he still bought her a cheap dress, showing that all those concerns are just for show. Tudwig is basically biting his lips at this point from the extreme embarrassment. Johann sensed the foul mood of his older brother as well, causing him to sweat in nervousness. Meanwhile, our girl is clearly enjoying the ruckus she made, smiling from one ear to another. She decided that the first prince must experience embarrassment first before she leaves the palace. The situation was made worse because the first prince got embarrassed in his own camp. Getting ridiculed publicly like this is too much for him to bear, and that is exactly what our girl wants. Peony then notices something. The second prince isn't around, so she wonders where he could be. But for our girl, that's actually a good thing. Her hand suddenly starts shaking with the thoughts of the second prince, as if Peony's body is reacting on its own. In Peony's memories, she shuddered like a mouse thrown into a snake's den when she stood before the second prince, and although the first prince was the biggest jerk, her body only remembers fear, not the mind. Our girl is worried about Peony's body's reaction when she meets the second prince, worried that she might not be able to control her reaction despite her clear thinking. Peony abruptly notices Ernest take a quick glance at her, then frowns. She wonders if the perceptive Duke already has a clue about Peony's situation within her family. Tudwig calls his assistant, whom immediately responded. He tells the man that he specifically instructed him to adorn the dress with genuine pearls only. The assistant nervously explains that he has checked Peony's dress at least 4 or 5 times just to make sure, but it seems it was replaced after entering the imperial palace by the princess's maids. After hearing this, Tudwig just clicks his tongue and didn't utter any more words. We can be sure that those maids will get their dues. Meanwhile, our girl embraces Siona and asks her brother if she could bring her along, saying that she doesn't want any other maid except for Siona. The first prince responds, saying that he isn't sure if the maid would be a suitable gift for his little sister's wedding, but Peony states that she would absolutely love such present. Tudwig then walks closer to our girl and puts his hand on her shoulder. While wearing a sinister smile on his face, he wishes our girl to live a happy life. He then squeezes Peony's shoulder tightly, and states that if her husband in any way tries to annoy her, she needs to make sure to send her older brother a message. Our girl knows the underlying threats of Tudwig's words, but she is more focused on her shoulder right now. That is aching because of the first prince's firm grip. Peony trembles in fear, but she knows that she mustn't show any weakness and must continue smiling all throughout the interaction. For her, this is all just a play, and besides, the main scene isn't over yet. Suddenly, Ernest came apologizing, then slaps away Tudwig's hand off of our girl's shoulder. The first prince and our girl were clearly taken aback by Ernest's brave gesture. Peony's eyes widened from shock. She didn't know that her husband cares about her this much. The Duke continues, saying that from now on, he will take good care of his wife, then proceeds to apologize once again to Tudwig for his rudeness. Our girl can't help but gaze by the valiant display of Ernest right in front of her. Meanwhile, the people around started gasping from the Duke's insolence, asking how dare Ernest put a hand on his majesty. But Ernest didn't care about their opinion, nor about the first prince's reaction. He just turned around with Peony in tow, and then bids his farewell. The Duke placed his hand on our girl's shoulder, but the sensation is different from what Tudwig did. According to our girl, she felt warmth and gentleness in Ernest's hand. At first, he seems indifferent, but he is actually not, and he cares about Peony more than he shows. In fact, he's a man who doesn't care about the formalities used in today's powers. Though he's the type that won't care, Ernest maintains his ethics more aristocratically than anyone else in the place. So, his earlier gesture can be interpreted as if he has announced to everyone that he would respect our girl in the future. Our girl places her hand on Ernest's, symbolizing that she accepts their marriage wholeheartedly. Peony blushes. Her heart hurts because it beats so hard at the presence of her husband. She takes a quick glance on her husband, and thinks that when she ended her life as Gabby, she thought they would never meet again. For the past few days, she was worried that all of this was just an illusion, but not that they are together face to face without anyone interrupting them. She can't fathom what kind of miracle has been granted to her. She then looks away, prompting Ernest to ask if there is something on her mind. The Duke doesn't suspect Peony to be actually Gabby, but our girl doesn't mind. She just wants to spend her life once again with the man she loves. As they step into the carriage, Ernest tells the servant that it is time for their departure, to which the servant obediently follows. Our girl is reading too much about the situation. There are many other carriages, but Ernest decided to ride the same one as her. Like the hand the Duke offered her before getting into the carriage, it was also a kind gesture. From his perspective, there was no reason for them to share the same carriage, but it was clear that he wanted to be a barrier to protect the weak princess, making sure it doesn't fall into the hands of the vile first prince. While she's staring at him, she thinks that Ernest is really a man that she can't help but fall in love with. As she gazes upon the window, Peony thinks that she is finally free from the grasps of her evil brothers, free from the torment of the kingdom. Even though she has a new body, she is finally returning to her beloved land. She smiles as nostalgia hits her really hard, reminiscing about the memories from her life as Gabby. Then, she sees her reflection on the window. Even though it has been days to weeks that she has been integrated to Peony's body, it still surprises her how much her differ now compared when she was still Gabby. No matter how many times she sees it, she just can't get used to her current face. Her eyes that rise like a cat's, round eyebrows that counteract the sharp impression of the eyes, a light blush that reflects the freshness of a 23-year-old girl. She then touches her lips, saying that it's like the first day of spring. Peony wakes up from her little mind wandering, remembering that she is in the same carriage as Ernest. She then thinks about if it is possible for her to act so naturally cute and innocent, saying that it would be a bit difficult for her. It may be because Gabriella Nassayert was originally the villain, playing a cunning woman. At the moment, suddenly, some questions arose about Gabby's death. First off, who killed Gabby? This is something that Ernest has probably already investigated. She is not exactly sure, but given the situation, it is likely that it was the first prince or the second prince. He is not known to be cunning or dangerous enough to use such tactics though. Most importantly, the first prince is trying to win the battle for succession. He had a great interest in ancient treasure and divine relics. Considering that his target was the essence relic, it is very likely that the mastermind was the first prince, as the assailant tried to snatch Gabby's ring. Second question that comes to her mind is how she ended up in the future, and not in the past, and also in someone else's body. Normally, she should go back and use her knowledge about the future to get closer to her husband again. That is the typical development of a novel. Then it dawns her, maybe it is because she swallowed the relic. She thinks about researching more about the relic when she gets to X. For the third and last question, if she got reincarnated to Peony's body, then where could be the owner of the body went? Anyway, the most important thing for our girl is that she is Ernest's wife once again. And this time, she will never die and will live happily ever after with him. To achieve this time, she will make sure to hand over the certain thing she wasn't able to give Ernest before she died as Gabby. According to what she heard at the previous meeting, it is clear that Ernest hasn't gotten the thing yet, or if he did, maybe it had no effect. A part of our girl wants to sit down with the Duke right now and talk about it, but, as she expected, she still can't say that she is actually Gabby. No matter how hard she strains her throat to speak out the words, something is preventing her from talking. Left with no choice, she just stared at her husband and laments on her current situation. Even though Ernest is so close to him, she can't still reach him. The carriage continued their travel all the way to the land of the night, the northern sea. Peony enjoys the beautiful sight of the road ahead. The breeze is still fresh, making our girl remember that faithful day. The gentle waves are crashing against the shore, while Ernest carries our girl, Gabby, delicately on his back. Our girl can still remember every footprint he leaves for every step he takes on the sand. That was the day the two got closer to each other. No words were spoken between the two, yet the connection in their hearts was undeniably strong. The silence and calmness put Gabby at ease, add to the security that her husband provided. All that existed in that moment was Ernest and her. It is as if they were the only ones in the world. Our girl expresses her longingness for that moment. Our girl decides that she will release the restriction that's binding her from telling the truth, and one day inform her husband that she is actually Gabby in Peony's body. Then it hits her, she has heard something about a restriction before. She doesn't want to believe that it would be the case, but there is a possibility that it might be actually true. Our girl remembers reading about a tough restriction in the original novel of March for a True Saint, where the female main character, Ingrid, was also presented as a person possessed for the novel. There is something called roles restrictions for Ingrid in this world. Ingrid, a beautiful lady with orange hair, is asking a certain person about the said roles restrictions. The man explains that her role was ordered by God, and like the characters in the imprinted page, there are stuff that must be done. If Ingrid achieves this until a certain level, the restrictions will be retired. Ingrid presses for more details about it. The man closes the book that he is reading and hands it to Ingrid, saying that he will allow her to read it if she wants. Ingrid takes the book, accepting the man's shrouded in mystery's offer. The guy has white eye and crimson red eyes with a piercing gaze. The book he's given Ingrid is titled The Character's Book, and the script is even in Korean. Well, it must have been hard for the writer to use another country's language in ancient scripts. Ingrid opens the book and skims through the content. The mysterious man points out the passage of the restrictions and states that Ingrid Weibel is under the continuous spirit's curse. The lady has totally no idea what the man is talking about, so she inquires further. The man explains that to fix it, she has to defeat everyone who pick a fight with her. Ingrid was shocked after hearing this condition. She asks if that is really the condition to lift the curse, suggesting that it would be difficult to complete such a task. The man states that he calls that condition as Salpuri. Anyway, one thing is for certain, if Ingrid doesn't fulfill the conditions well, the restriction will continue to persist. Ingrid laughs from disbelief and she can't find the right words to express her emotions. The man then puts on his hood and prepares to leave, but Ingrid stops him and asks when this crazy so-called god will free this restriction. The mysterious guy states that no one really knows the exact date, but he mentions that it won't be for a long time. That is why, until that time comes, he would like to spend time with Ingrid, saying that he wants to have a nice view. Ingrid flips out, asking the man if he finds this situation somewhat comical. And that is what our girl remembers about the restrictions that she is facing right now. Back to the present, Peony tightly grabs her dress after that eureka moment. To relieve this restriction of not being able to say she is Gabby, it is clear that she has to act following the character during a certain lapse of time. The character that she received was Gabby, a mean girl that appears like a saint. The important point is that vile woman is on the border of death. She looks at her hands and thinks that perhaps it has something to do with why she ended up in Peony's body. Peony was the person more indicated to interpret the character given to Gabriella Nassayert. Since ancient times, Gabby's character always pretended to be slender, weak, have a lot of tears, innocent, excited. Gabby basically faked everything. Our girl is all fired up to do all of that once again. While smiling cheerfully, she will say everything she has to say, and pretend to not know anything while acting innocent. Peony's aura became sinister as she adapts Gabby's personality. She declares to the god to just wait and see. She will be interpreting Peony's character perfectly, and she will break the restrictions and will regain everything she once had. That will of course include her husband, friends, and subordinates. These are all the persons that our girl misses so much, and they are still in the X castle. This time around, she will really love Ernest, and that is exactly the kind of actuation that the book wants. She confidently states that there is nothing she can't and won't do to regain her freedom from the restrictions and live happily with Ernest. The Duke is staring at Peony while she gazes out the window, deep in her thoughts. Ernest then informs her that they will be camping for some days, which made our girl look at his way. The Duke states that when they arrive at the X castle, he will give her the East Wing, saying that the princess would be able to live there with the maids. Our girl's face turns sad after hearing her position. She ponders about how cold Ernest is being to her right now, but she understands that her husband wouldn't instantly become warm to her just because they got married. Still, she can't help but think that Ernest wasn't as cold as this before. Both his eyes and voice have definitely become more mature and deeper compared from the time that she was still Gabby. Our girl ponders what the hell caused the man's voice become so deep. Ernest then realizes that Peony is staring at him intensely, causing him to look at her as well. He asks if there is something on his face that catches Peony's interest. This question reminded our girl about the old Ernest, the one she knew and loved. Our girl blushes as she sees the resemblance of the old Ernest. She giggled and answers that there's nothing on his face. Peony thinks about what can she say to lighten up the mood between them, knowing that Ernest might be a little worried despite his calm demeanor. She rests her head on her palm, and in a relaxed and happy manner, she asks Ernest why is her husband so cool. The galloping of the horse is heard around the surroundings. Except for that, no noise is heard. Our girl's futile attempt to compliment Ernest has backfired against her. She thought that she would create a wonderful mood between them by acting so familiar, but she can't be any more further from the result. Peony thinks that she might have destroyed her reputation towards the Duke already. Ernest then opens his mouth to break the awkward silence around them. He asks if Peony did her act on purpose earlier. The Duke is talking about the time where Peony spun around to show Tudwig her dress embedded with fake pearls. In reality, our girl really did that on purpose, but she can't say it out loud, so she just answered him by asking if it was a waste. Ernest says no, then ends the conversation. Our girl thinks that the Duke might have accepted the marriage between him and Peony because the princess wasn't a brilliant and perceptive person. If it were someone that could cause the slightest damage in the Northern Sea, even if the person was just a little cunning, Ernest would have flat out rejected the marriage with Peony. So, even if it is frustrating for our girl, she must not reveal that she isn't actually an idiot. But it seems that she won't let herself get behind either. She grins, thinking about something. Peony then tells Ernest that the clothes she's wearing is actually uncomfortable. The Duke states that he hadn't thought about that, and inquires if the dress is too tight for her. Ernest suggests that he will stop the carriage and instruct a maid to help her with her wardrobe malfunction. But our girl says no immediately. She pins Ernest into the seat, taking the man by surprise, and says that she can't stand it anymore. She leans closer to her husband and asks if he can help her unloose her dress, seducing the man. Our girl states that just because she has to pretend not to know anything doesn't mean she can't actually do anything. Looks like we are about to see some car fun, or in this case, carriage fun. Ernest's surprised expression didn't last long, and it went back to its normal indifferent attitude. He says that he will now stop the carriage and tell the maid to do something about our girl's problem. Peony quickly lost her smile, seeing that her seduction failed. For a moment, without realizing it, our girl looked forward to some carriage fun, but she got instantly blocked. She wonders if it would have been preceded if she was still Gabby. Our girl is getting aggressive, so it seems. Peony then loses interest after getting rejected and walks away, saying that she will follow Ernest's suggestion. In our girl's mind, it doesn't matter if Ernest doesn't recognize her. How could he even know that she's actually Gabby if she is in a different body? Furthermore, the Duke has been blinded by hatred and rumors, plus the common sense of the world. It is all understandable for our girl, aware that Ernest's response is only natural. But she still can't help but feel disappointed. She reminds herself that she is now Princess Peony of the Force of the Day. To distract herself, she just thinks about the Eastern Annex, a building for the guests. Although it is beautiful, it is very distant from the main building where Ernest resides. Although a peace marriage was concluded for the sake of the North Sea, our girl can't help but feel like Ernest has no intention of living with Peony like a real couple. While loosening her dress, she states that she will pretend she doesn't know Ernest's real intention. However, our girl is dedicated to one day letting Ernest know the truth, and she will absolutely make him recognize her. The carriage halts in the dense forest where Duke Ernest's faction sets up a camp to rest for the night. While reading some document, Ernest's attention is called by someone. The Duke comments that it seems things has gone well, to which Sebastian Descend, the principal assistant director, happily confirms. Sebastian states that it was a pretty big harvest for them. The cargo was entrusted to others in the command, and he immediately sent it to the ship. Ernest praises the man for the job well done, expressing her satisfaction while still upholding a calm disposition. The harvest they are talking about are the transport of real objects and civilians who would serve as witnesses to overthrow the first prince. This was the initial plan from the moment they received the primary document to conclude a peaceful marriage, a mission entrusted only to the most loyal elites, including Sebastian, the culprit who had taken his wife away from him and the person he had been searching for since the fateful day 6 years ago. While casually sipping his tea, Ernest thinks in his head that this is the way to finish off the first prince. However, he suddenly spits out the tea, saying that Sebastian's tea-making skill is still the worst. Sebastian jokingly states that his skill is still better compared to their lady's ability in making tea. Pertaining to Gabby, he adds that it will soon be the anniversary of her death, saying that Ernest will like the gift he will offer to Gabby's altar this year. Ernest turns serious as he wipes off the tea on his mouth. He instructs Sebastian to address Gabby as madam and not lady, to which Sebastian responds with a chuckle, apologizing for his mistake. The topic then shifts towards Peony, with Sebastian saying that the princess said nothing wrong and they should express their gratitude to her by helping Peony. Ernest places his hand on the table and agrees with Sebastian. However, he states that his mind doesn't work like that. The assistant turns around and states that they are still giving his late wife the proper respect she deserves even though Ernest is marrying another woman now. The Duke acknowledges this, saying that the fourth princess, Peony, is not someone who can harm the North. He has researched about her completely. Princess Peony has a little sociability skill and strong impulsiveness. Her personality is also good. She has the intelligence and conversation skills of a child. She couldn't learn how members of the royal family should act. Since she was little, the second prince mistreated her and she suffers from sleepwalking. Ernest has no intention of having any woman by his side since Gabby died. The reason he accepted the princess was because he felt that she was not a rational woman. Well, it is said that she had the intellectual capacity of a little girl. He accepted her for revenge, but planned to treat her like a younger sister and care for her for the rest of his life. Looks like someone has a sister complex. But the princess really was as the rumors describes. Suddenly, the conversation between Ernest and Sebastian was interrupted by a soldier barging into their tent to inform them that there is a fight outside. Sebastian tells Ernest that he will attend to it, prompting the Duke to just rest and stop looking at the documents. Now that Ernest is left alone, he starts to ponder about what Gabby would have think to his actions. He thinks that her late wife would have been disappointed to know that he agreed to this marriage out of revenge. According to him, he needed a reason to travel freely through territories of the Day's forces, so he accepted the alliance. If he used the fourth princess as an excuse, it will be easier to get to the first prince. Ernest's conscience is eating him away for using Peony as his tool for revenge, though he can't just give up on avenging his beloved wife. Ernest is left alone in his tent as Sebastian went out to check about the alleged fight happening outside. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the visage of his late wife, her pretty eyes and perfect smile, how her skin turns blue when the weather is cold, and the softness of her body. All of these beloved memories are slowly fading from his brain after 6 long years. Our boy admits to himself that he's feeling sad. Sad because he wasn't able to protect her that day. All he can do is stay by her side in the rain for a long time as she breathes her final breath. Ernest had read the letter of Gaby and immediately rushed to her side, but he was still a bit too late to do anything. Since then, he visits the place on every rainy day so that he won't forget a single thing of what happened that day. He instills to his mind how red was the blood that spread under the carriage, how cold her body was as life escapes her. He will never forget the sound of her meek breathing no matter how long he lives. Our boy made a vow to himself that he will crush everyone and anyone involved in that cruel incident. Those who had dare kill his beloved wife. Ernest promises that he will personally end their miserable existence. While Ernest is still recalling the painful event of the past, Phony sneaks into his tent, calling for his attention. The Duke was shocked upon hearing Phony's voice. For a moment, it reminded him of Gaby. A few minutes ago, we see our girl looking out of the window, looking bored as heck. She thinks to herself that there is no such thing as a romantic first night in her marriage with Ernest this time. They will have to stay in a room, so he probably chose to camp on purpose to avoid her. It's not like our girl hates the idea of her husband rejecting another woman, but still, the fact that she is also that another girl hurts her. Well, this is a rather confusing scenario. Getting jealous of yourself is truly a dilemma. She then calls upon her servant, Sonia, who is busy munching some snacks like a chubby hamster. She asks the maid if she knows where the Duke's barracks are. In the spur of the moment, Sonia, who doesn't want to get scolded by the princess, crushes her food and states that she will quickly look for it. Our girl slightly laments at the fact that the maid is only obeying her because she wants to receive a good treatment and not out of loyalty. Well, Phony doesn't really want such a thing, but still. Moments later, Sonia comes back with the good news, saying that she found Ernest's tent. And that is how we got to this scenario, where our girl is cheerfully volunteering to make a cup of tea to the Duke. However, it is very apparent that her sudden visit isn't very much appreciated by the Duke, visibly seen on his expression. Despite being irritated, Ernest chooses to pay it no mind and told our girl that a princess like her doesn't have to do such mundane tasks for him, surprising our girl. Phony then sees the teacups on the table, giving her the idea that the Duke already had some. She irked after realizing that Sebastian might be the one who brewed it, recalling that the man was awful at it. Our strong-willed girl insists on boiling some for her husband, but Ernest declines the offer. She then asked if she can make a tea for herself and drink it inside the Duke's tent, to which Ernest also declines, saying that she can do it in the carriage. Now, we are left with a very awkward standoff with the two, staring at each other, not knowing what to say next. Phony, or I guess it would be appropriate to call her Gaby, who isn't used to getting this kind of treatment and acting all cutesy, is getting irritated after being rejected so many times. But since she has no choice, she continued feigning innocence, saying that she doesn't want to drink tea outside because everyone hates her, all while acting cute and pitiful like a damsel in distress. Not wanting to press the issue further, the ice-cold Duke finally gives in and allows the stubborn princess to drink it inside, but she has to go to sleep immediately after. Phony then brews and pours the tea for herself. Ernest notices that she's particularly good at it. He notices that it was the same during the Poyer Pearls incident, but he didn't believe it. He wonders if the princess was really treated that badly that she even had to make her own tea to be this skilled. The more he watches our girl, the more curious he becomes. Upon observing better, there's no way she can attain such kind of grace and precision in tea making alone. Somehow, the amusing sight of Phony preparing tea reminded Ernest of his late wife, stinging him with bittersweet nostalgia. The Duke is confused. He doesn't like the fact that he saw his beloved wife in another woman because for him, there is only one Gaby, and those unknown bastards took her away from him. Our girl then carefully places a cup in front of the Duke, gently offering it to him. In her surprise, Ernest lifts the cup, indicating that he's accepting it. Phony asks if he's going to drink it, to which the Duke replies yes, for she has already prepared it. Our girl's eyes widened in delight, saying that the temperature of the drink should be just perfect, looking like a kid proud of her work. Ernest takes a sip of the tea. Just as the liquid touched his taste buds, a sudden burst of familiarity came rushing in. It is indeed the exact same taste of the tea that Gabriella used to make, the flavor he has missed so much. Phony then asks him if he liked it. She comments that she actually prefers to drink it with tea and honey alone. After that remark, our girl bids the Duke goodnight as she has already finished drinking hers. Ernest is once again left alone in his tent, thinking about his late wife. He finds it too much of a coincidence that the tea tastes like Gaby's blend, and Phony also prefers tea with honey. This kind of preference is uncommon with the women, confusing the Duke even more as to why the two have so much in common. As he ponders about it more, he realizes that there is something with Phony that he cannot ignore. Maybe that's why he continues to get involved with her, despite deciding that he will keep his distance. With this unexpected interaction, our girl has successfully made the Duke decide to keep her close so that he can observe her. Ernest calls upon Gaby, asking for guidance. He would like to receive help from her to sort out these confusing feelings. He never thought that there would be someone who will make him feel the way Gaby made him feel. Gabriella was a Grand Duchess respected by everyone in X. She didn't laugh often, but when she turns around and smiles from time to time, he had no choice but be absorbed by that seductive smile. In the end, Ernest unknowingly violated their written contract. The Duke has fallen in love with the peculiar lady. She was distracted by everything related to her. Soft and pinky lips, slender neck, memories about her are rushing in his brain. The nights he spent alone and sick, thinking about her, accumulated. And on the day they finally made love to each other, the Duke thought that he didn't need anything in the world more than her. However, all those blissful days was forcibly taken away from him. They took his beloved Duchess away. Now, all those memories are being thrown into his heart once again by this girl named Phony. The next morning, we see the beautiful princess stretching her limbs out after a good night's sleep. She sees the Duke's men having a breakfast by the campfire, and she feels lonely and isolated once again. The men took a glimpse of her and immediately murmured to each other, making her feel even more out of place. Phony can't help but awkwardly smiles at her situation, knowing that she'll go through unimaginable hardship to regain her status from when she was still Gaby. She notices that the first prince as well as the third prince's personal guards are out of sight. It is total negligence to do this even knowing that the Northern Navy is against them. Well, in all honesty, our girl prefers it that way since she can freely move around without the guards restricting her. Then, she notices something awry. The soldiers are acting kind of suspicious, alerting our girl. The men are coughing loudly, and they are all trying to miserably hide it. Fiani wonders if the soldiers are sick. Concerned, she steeled her resolve and confronted them. After some talk, the princess gave them each a drink, making the men confused. Our girlie proudly states that the drink is honey tea, saying that she always have it whenever she has a cold. She tells them that it is good for their coughs, so she urges them to consume it. Still, the men can't help but be wary of her, since she's technically a stranger to them and is part of the opposing side as well. Meanwhile, Sonia, who sees the soldiers being reluctant to the offer, becomes increasingly annoyed. She finally flips out, scolding the men for not accepting the drink. She states that it was so difficult to make, so the least they could do is to accept it. Furthermore, they used their precious honey and cinnamon just for it and even added lemon for balance. That's why it frustrates her so much to see them act this way. Earlier, our girl gave her a precious fork embedded with jewelries, saying that she should show it to the soldiers if they didn't give her anything. However, Sonia is still furious whenever she recalls the difficulties of preparing it. It even made her arms swell from stirring so hard. Gradually being convinced, some of the men starts to think about drinking the tea. However, as one was lifting the cup, his colleague stopped him, expressing his wariness to the drink. Fortunately, the man states that the princess surely would not harm them. And so, this brave soldier took the risk and chugged the tea that Phony gave them. Much to his surprise, it was actually delicious. It was so good that pink flowers started blooming in the background. Thank goodness his clothes wasn't blown off like in Shokugeki, or else YouTube will get mad. Thanks to that soldier's bravery, all his fellow men started lining up to have some for themselves as well. However, despite the tables turning around, this moody servant is still furious at the fact that they had to doubt their intention earlier, and didn't even think of trying it first. I don't even know who's the real princess at this point. She scolds the men for being ungrateful, saying that they didn't even show their gratitude for receiving such a wonderful gift. Realizing their mistake, they all thank the princess in unison. This scene is somehow similar to a clueless boyfriend not knowing why his girlfriend is mad, so he just does everything she says. Or at least based on what I see on the internet. Not that I have a lover myself, you hoo hoo. Anyway, after consuming Fioni's magical tea, the soldier's coughs somehow stopped or at least mitigated. Our girl then wonders how things would have turned out if she acted this way when she was still Gabby. You see, at that time, she was very indifferent and distant to people. After getting married, she focused on surviving. When she gave her heart to the Duke, she was filled with great happiness. At that time, she was only able to get close to Ernest after many attempts because of her own indecisiveness. She thought he wouldn't love her, and was afraid that her love for him would be discovered. She was scared that she would become too greedy for his affection and lose the Duke in the process. The same thing happened with Ernest's people. At first, Gabby was afraid to approach them because they might have been looking at her as a temporary duchess. But she realized that she should treat them with kindness. She was also the Duchess of X, so she had to do her best to help them. Fioni tells the men that she will give them some more tomorrow, but it won't be that much for she has very little money left. Our girl has decided that she will never think the same way as before. She will minimize hesitating for her actions. Then, she notices one particular solider holding a bowl. This blue-haired hunk is Christian, and he's so preoccupied with his food. The first time that our girl saw this man was when he was still 17 years old. He's Ernest's reliable subordinate and friend for 10 years, along with Sebastian, who became our girl's friend later on. Christian Bellemere is a member of the Bellemere family, famous for their loyalty passed down from generation to generation. There was also Vice Admiral Valken Torts, who closely assisted Ernest. And since we don't know them yet, the artist decided to draw him with his back facing towards us, keeping his face a secret yet. Another mysterious man who is still not yet unlocked is Guyan Aguiz, a funny guy who always made Gaby smile. And lastly, Brynhilda Anito, the bravest soldier that Gaby know of. Just like the two, this character's face will be revealed as the story progresses. Our girl misses them so much. Phony sits down beside Christian and tries to initiate a conversation, greeting him with a smile. The man is stunned for a bit, surprised that the princess would try to talk to him. Our girl smiled even brighter and waved at him to try to lighten up the mood. But the man coldly dismisses her, saying that she should stop spying on them and go back to her carriage. The man then walks away from our girl, leaving Phony alone and isolated once again. Our girl knew that earning their trust would not be that easy, and she's prepared for that. She called Christian by his title, Mayor Bellemere, which made the man halt his steps. He coldly looks back at Phony, furiously asking how she knows his last name. He doesn't recall ever mentioning it to the princess. Our girl then tells him that she hopes they have a proper introduction with each other in the future. But Christian shouldn't be so obvious in showing his dislike toward her. After all, despite being a total stranger, she is still Ernest's wife, and he's just a mere soldier. Out of rage, the man has dropped his plate to the ground, wasting the delicious-looking food. Our girl just casually walked away from the crime scene with a grin on her face. She recalls that teasing the stern man is always a lot of fun. Man, our girl turned out to be a professional teaser and a bully. The only thing that has changed between them is their relationship. If he's still the same man that our girl knows, he will think about what she said earlier for a while. According to our girl, he is not the type to take things like this lightly. Christian is a very cautious man, so Phoebe knows that he will observe her even more after this interaction, which is what our girl wants. She wants Christian to observe her every move. Maybe someday, he might see a glimpse of resemblance of Gabby to her. But even if he doesn't recognize her as Gabriella, or Ernest doesn't start to change his attitude towards our girl, even if the Duke and Phony can't become a loving couple, none of that changes that fact that Phony is still the Duchess of X. Everyone in the north has their own ocean, and it is the people's job to illuminate it. However, our girl acknowledges that her ocean is still full of darkness. There are footprints in the sand on the shore from when she went out with a lantern. When she looked back, she thought about how far she has come, and sometimes tell herself that it is enough. The next day, a sudden cry of urgency was directed at Phony, hurriedly waking her up. Our girl just slowly opened her eyes, as if she was expecting this to happen. She thought to herself that it has finally started. As we continue, our girl is abruptly woken up by an urgent call from outside her carriage. However, despite the suddenness of the call, Feeny remained unfazed and has an expression on her eyes that she had already anticipated this. You see, in this world, there are two forces, the forces of the day and the forces of the night. They are two opposing factions that have clashed for a long time, and now those forces have come together with the marriage of Duke Ernest and Princess Feeny. There's no way there won't be any riots that opposes such marriage. Our girl reveals that she has been waiting for this. With a carefree expression on her face, she asks the person who called her what's happening. A man introduces himself as Jahan, the person in charge of food transportation. He states his doubts against the northern forces, thinking that they will come after them and demand that they immediately divide their food supplies in. He asks our girl if she believes that they will depart from the port first and load it onto the ship. After all, the forces of day consider the Northern Navy to be ignorant and stupid. Our girl, who was previously the Duchess of the Forces of the Night, was enraged after hearing this idiot berate the Northern Navy, but she holds herself back from saying anything because she is Princess Feeny right now. Instead, she just smiles at him and asks if Jahan can't just hand over the supplies to her. However, the man insists that the princess listens to him carefully. He is sure that the Duke is ignoring her. He states that his mission is to keep the Emperor's supplies safe, a job that is not to be taken lightly. Jahan expresses his anger, feeling that the princess is ignoring him. Little did he know, our girl has already expected that he will behave this way. Based on Feeny's assessment, this man wanted the northern soldiers to beg for food like beggars. If they give them half of the food first, they won't do that. This Jahan is pathetic that the third prince doesn't even deal with him. Feeny grins, thinking that this is a good opportunity for her to step in and allow the growth for the Emperor's men. Jahan is getting impatient. He demands that Feeny stops looking at him from the window and come out to give him the order. In response, our girl does just that. She goes out of her carriage and acts dumb, saying that it seems Jahan have had to do a difficult job. Seeing her aloof expression, Jahan thinks to himself that this princess is really dumb and reliable. But he can't just blurt that out. However, he feels that the Emperor has entrusted him with this important task. It is his chance to do well and consolidate his position. As it turns out, this man is the nephew of the first Emperor. Getting extremely impatient, the soldier walks in front of our girl, not giving a single damn about personal space, and disrespectfully says that he thinks the princess doesn't know anything yet because she's still young. He was about to continue insulting our girl when Feeny interrupts him. She asks who does Jahan thinks he is to just go and insult her husband's army. Furthermore, this soldier should not dare talk about the dignity of the Emperor. Plus, he's acting as if he is the Emperor himself, having that arrogant air with him. Our cunning heroine continues her charade, saying that this is the first time she has seen a person as reckless as Jahan. She adds that just looking at his face makes her stomach twitch. Feeny orders him to leave and return to the Imperial Palace immediately. Hearing this, Jahan has completely forgot the hierarchy and raised his voice against Feeny, asking who the hell does she think she is for her to tell him such order. In response, our strong-willed girl questions if he's judging her. With all of the nonsense that the man is spouting, she feels like she's going to faint. She no longer wants to see Jahan's face, even those who works under him. Thus, she commands for all of them to return to the Imperial Palace. All of Jahan's subordinates, along with the man himself, were shocked upon hearing such absurd statement. They cannot say anything from being so surprised, and their jaws almost hit the floor. While our girl is making all these scenes, Christian is watching over her on the sidelines with great interest, despite it not showing on his face. Feeny brushes past by him and whispers that she hopes they can talk properly next time, and also remarks that Christian shouldn't be so sensitive just because he met someone he doesn't like. Needless to say, the blue-haired hunk was taken aback by our girl's comment. He didn't expect that his cold demeanor would be taken as being sensitive. Our girl then appoints a new soldier to be in charge of the transportation of food. The man was a bit surprised by the sudden promotion, but he's more than willing to do so. With the background changing into gold, showcasing his happiness, he states that he'll definitely do a better job compared to the idiot Jahan. He quickly issues his first command to his now subordinates, stating that no one should dare touch him. He is now His Majesty's new representative. Of course, Jahan didn't take this lightly and confronted the man, but the new representative has a very strong sense of duty and fought back, resulting to the two of them squaring up. Our girl is delighted. Everything is going as she has expected. She has been handing out honey tea for a few days, and she has observed several people in their relationships. In a short amount of time, she's been scouting who will be her rivals, threats, who hates who and what other people likes. Needless to say, the result is quite satisfactory for her. Sebastian then creeps behind her, whispering that something good might be happening to Feeny for her to smile brightly like that. Our girl was a bit taken aback by her abrupt appearance, but the man just gave him a wonderful smile and greets her a good morning. He introduces himself to the princess, saying that he's Sebastian de Sen, an officer in the Northern Navy. He asks our girl if he can take the liberty of fixing the mess for her. Feeny is delighted upon seeing him, stating that he can do whatever he wants. Although she's glad that she's starting to make a connection with her former friend, she wonders for how long was the man has been observing her. With that being said, the four-eyed cutie took our girl's words for it and immediately sprung to action, reprimanding the rowdy forces of day soldiers while Feeny just clapped for him as a support. Suddenly, a commanding voice is heard, saying that this kind of scene is not something that the princess should witness. The origin of that stern and stoic voice is none other than our boy, the cold Duke, Ernest. Upon his arrival, the soldiers quickly behaved themselves and offered salutations to him. Feeny remarks that she's fine despite the rowdiness, saying that the soldiers are protecting her pretty well. Ernest just stared at her with dead eyes, acknowledging her statement. Our girl notices that her husband seems to be aware of everything. As soon as the conflict with Jehan began, Ernest's soldiers immediately came to the rescue. Ernest states that it is not desirable for the princess to witness such commotion, so he prompts her to come with him. Feeny grabs his clothes, saying that she won't move a single inch away from where they are unless Jehan is dismissed. Damn, our girl really loathes that man. In our girl's thoughts, to improve her relationship with Ernest, who doesn't even pronounce her name, she must make it clear to him that he's on their side. For that, she has to make sure to suppress the day's forces people without remorse. Jehan prostrates himself to our girl, saying that it is all a misunderstanding. It's just that he doesn't want to give his position to his cousin. After hearing our girl, Ernest walks towards the man and stabs his arm. With a commanding tone of voice and a cold gaze, he states that everyone shall follow his command. Jehan is no longer the supply director, and all current workers will be replaced. All the soldiers in the area gave salutations to the Duke and acknowledged his words in unison. Then, the terrifying Duke turns towards our girl, commenting that it was a good tactic to keep the opponent in the same position. However, he clarifies that Feeny doesn't have to do anything. She doesn't have to take action. Our girl feels saddened with her husband's words. She just wants to prove her loyalty to him, and is trying her best to gain his trust. Ernest then drops his sword and leans closer towards our girl. With his cold gaze remaining intact, he asks Feeny if she understands what he's trying to say. Our girl is left speechless. She thinks that the Duke's statement is perfect. She doesn't have to do anything. It clear as day, Ernest doesn't want her to take action. It's not a difficult command to understand, but our girl can't bring herself to stay put. Suddenly, Siona springs to action, extending her arms towards something while screaming no. She then lunges to Jehan, who is currently on the ground, demanding that the man give the princess hairpin back. She reveals that Jehan refused to give Feeny some honey to hand out to the knight's soldiers, so the princess exchanged her precious hairpin for the honey. That hairpin is not an ordinary one. It is decorated with precious emerald, making it really expensive. The soldiers who heard this were astonished. They cannot believe Feeny had to exchange something so valuable just to prepare tea for them. They began to realize how thoughtful Feeny really is, and are now mad at Jehan for deceiving such pure-hearted girl. Of course, Ernest will not let this go unpunished. His cold gaze turned into absolute zero as he stares at Jehan with disgust and anger. Later on, he tells our girl that the man named Jehan who has disrespected and deceived Feeny was sentenced to death for his actions. He thanks his wife for being so thoughtful towards his men, saying that it was because of her that their cold got better. However, he insists that Feeny consults him first before she takes any action. Our girl bashfully states that she didn't want to bother Ernest, who is busy all the time for such trivial matters. Touched by her gesture, the cold Duke eases up a bit and tells Feeny that he doesn't consider her to be a bother or anything like that. Feeny acknowledges this and walks away shyly. She can no longer hold back her emotions, so she chose to hide. In her heart, she wants Ernest to realize that she's really Gabriella, praying that one day the Duke will recognize it. The scene then shifts to a dock with a massive ship. Sebastian reports to Ernest that he has just dismissed half of the day forces just this day. Those are the ones that the Emperor himself has sent, so Sebastian states that the Duke's decision is clearly beneficial to them. Also, he comments that their soldiers seem to have a favorable attitude towards the princess, unlike their initial expectations. He jokingly states that superiors often take advantage of their position to manage their subordinates. Sebastian happily comments that it is kind of refreshing to drink some honey tea. Ernest then comments that even Sebastian himself seems to have changed his view to the princess. It seems that he's favoring Feeny quite a bit as well. Sebastian felt a little shy about the Duke's remarks and tries his best to deny it, but it's not looking very convincing. Then, a commotion is heard coming from the princess carriage with Siona shouting that the princess is tired and not to be bothered. As it turns out, the soldiers are flocking to Feeny's carriage in order to check if she's alright. They are worried about her because she hasn't left her carriage for the whole day. Sebastian states that unlike the third prince, Princess Feeny interacted with them very kindly and treated them well despite them being common soldiers and not high-ranking officers. Sebastian asks Ernest if Feeny's personality bothers him, to which the Duke says that it doesn't really matter. Nonetheless, they are about to meet the investigation team sent by the royal family, so it is important that the princess joins them. Historically, the royal family and the household of the Duke of X have maintained an uneasy coexistence. Regardless of their feelings, each party got what the other lacks. That Dayland is full of products that grow under the sun such as fruits and grains. On the other hand, the Nightland lacks basic foods, but it is full of magic oil. The magic oil is the basis for the research of magicians, and it is found in large quantities on the X seabed. If only an exchange of those two things had been necessary, the situation would not have been so complicated. Unfortunately, X didn't just lack food. There is a thing called extreme night sickness, a terrifying disease that causes the eyeballs to tremble and the pupils to shrink, until one day, they disappear completely, leaving only the white of the eyes. This sickness, which is only found in the Northern Sea, is incurable once it manifests itself, affecting people of all ages and genders. The only thing that can be done is to use gunpowder to slow down the progress of the disease. The essential ingredient is the bright grass, which only grows in the Temple of Valefrith in the south. Until now, the two forces had signed an unequal contract that benefited the royal family the most. But the situation changed due to the nuptial union. Furthermore, the disease research team added a bold clause that will support researchers. However, under the condition that the Princess Feeny lead them personally. The situation changed radically thanks to the unique presence of the princess. Food supplies, shining grass, experts, and support from the research team are all incredible for Sebastian. This contract will surely benefit the North. However, the condition on the Article 4 and 5 demands that the princess must conceive the child of the Duke. In return, 500 tons of shining grass will be given to them as congratulatory gift. The contract is basically pushing Ernest to fall in love with Feeny, but the Duke states that it will not happen. He has no intention of accepting any other woman except for his late wife, his one and only, Gabriella. Our girl is steadily making progress at making the forces of the night like her, but it seems that she still has long ways to go for Ernest to acknowledge her. What will happen next? How will the relationship between the cold-hearted Duke and the outcast princess turn out? Stay tuned in the next episode, and as always, it is our destiny to discover new manhwas.